Hello everyone, I want to recommend a book or three books written by my dear friend Emmanuel. He's someone that I trust a lot and has helped me a lot and has helped many since he created the Gnostic Method App. The main book I'm recommending here is called The Beginning in the Middle, and it is designed to be the companion study book to the Gnostic Method App. If you've not heard of this app, it is an excellent resource to help you walk this path towards the genuine awakening of your consciousness, towards your real being. There's a video about it in the description below. I recommend checking it out if you've not already. This book is a collection of essays written in a way that is clearly from my friend's own insights and experiences throughout his own journey. It is literally a companion, a book from a supportive friend to help you understand the not so easy to understand concepts and deeper mysteries of the Gnostic path. The Gnostic path being a very esoteric path. Not esoteric because we are trying to be fancy or mystical on purpose, but esoteric because the depths of our consciousness is not words and theories, but what is closer to the truth is, or what helps us to understand this truth better is mystical but also precise understanding of esoteric themes, symbols, analogies, metaphors, etc. It is a science, a specific esoteric science. A person who is primarily intellectual won't understand this about the Gnostic path being esoteric, because it's only until one begins having deeper personal meditations, self-realizations, astral experiences, awakening consciousness, that then one begins to start perceiving the world beyond the physical, where deeper dimensions of consciousness are understood much more profoundly through esoteric comprehension. So that is why we need to study, to better understand what we are going through as we walk our path. So what I'm trying to say here is that you could certainly get this book and enjoy it, especially if you have some experience on the path already, but ideally this book is best enjoyed while studying and practicing what is taught in the Gnostic Method app. As a lot of you know, I've recommended a lot of different Gnostic resources in my videos, but the Gnostic Method app, along with this book, is definitely one of the best, especially if you're a beginner, but also if you're experienced, to help you in a gradual and step-by-step way in understanding the true reality, depth, and power of these teachings. Now, I'm going to comment on the other two books in a little bit, briefly, but just before I do, I want to share just a couple of small themes that are explored in this book, The Beginning in the Middle. The following is by no means a description of what the whole book is about. It's just a couple of points that I personally really loved when I was reading it, and also which I feel people who watch this channel will benefit from too. In a lot of these teachings, we always say things like, follow your being, follow your inner master, follow your intuition. But most of us don't understand this, right? Why? Well, my friend begins this book by addressing this, and he breaks it down quite ruthlessly but also logically, that the way we perceive our world and our life and situation is just plainly incorrect. To quote, "We all take ourselves to be quite normal. We think the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act is normal. This is why it is so difficult for us to progress spiritually." A powerful point already, right? And he continues to talk about how no matter what we learn intellectually, whatever we build on our already abnormal foundation will fundamentally be abnormal. It will be flawed, meaning whatever spiritual knowledge we are studying will not bear fruit because we are trying to build it on a foundation that is already incorrect, abnormal, flawed. So why? Because we aren't changing at a fundamental level in our foundation. In other words, the situation we find ourselves in, here and now, in an unawakened state, is totally dysfunctional. He describes this dysfunction of our human machine, our human psyche, like this. We make the mistake of putting what is emotional into the area that processes intellectual information. Many times, we place what is sexual into the area of the body that deals with emotions. The outcome for us is very confusing. Consider a computer that, when you send an instruction to it, instead of sending it to the central processor, it ignores you and sends it directly to the printer. Can you imagine for a moment trying to run a business or an office, and when you send an email from one computer to another, the email takes on an emotional quality that you didn't include and adds numbers that were never sent by the original sender? The business would soon fail in its operation. This is how we all live and work every day psychologically. We wear our shoes on our hands and we have glasses on our ears. So, this humorous but terrible truth of our inherent malfunction becomes how we think and what we think we are, and we end up lost in this insanity and chaos. And so the point of studying and comprehending this is crucial in order to learn what it really means to access our real being, our inner master, that real part of our consciousness that is being obscured and controlled and covered up by this malfunction, this insanity, and this chaos. And so it's in this way, by studying this, by gaining self-knowledge and self-comprehension on all this, that we can learn what it means to create a conscious center of gravity within ourselves, or in other words, a conscious psyche within ourselves. Now, the idea of becoming psychologically conscious sounds quite simple and intellectual, doesn't it? But actually, this is a much deeper and much more of a sacred and divine unfolding within ourselves, this journey to really realize the reality of this. It is a path that is much more magical than we initially imagine. And a really great part of this book I loved is how it describes the nature of what magic really means, and more importantly, giving thanks to this divine aspect within ourselves, because once we start making progress on the path of awakening and start having magical experiences, such as astral projection, for example, it's very easy to start to think, I did this, I achieved this through my efforts. And so comes along the ego again, slowing down our learning and our sense of connection to our inner divinity. So to explain this further in short, and what is explained in the book, experiences are given to us. We don't make them. Ego does not enable experiences. In fact, it disables it. The problem is, we have an experience from a little state of ego, and then we wake up and say, wow, that was all me. I'm amazing. So what my friend emphasizes here in a beautiful way is that we must learn to give thanks where it's due. And I don't think I can emphasize this enough either, that we must recognize these powers are from our inner divinity, our consciousness, our inner divine mother and divine father, these superior aspects of our being. You know, a lot of people always ask for techniques for astral projection and what's the right way to do it, but they just don't get this part that is spoken about so well in this book. So I quote, "As the ego is still alive in us, we hide to ourselves the ego of self-love. We pat ourselves on our backs and say, well done. We must be very good students to have achieved this and that experience. How great we must be. And if we are extremely foolish, we may even begin to tell any Tom, Dick, or Harry about them. This early stage of our inner development is unfortunately the first stumbling block for many esoteric students. We must utterly destroy the ego of self-love and use that energy trapped inside that ego to give thanks to the elements that really support our inner growth. He who is awake without dreams, with all of the ego totally gone, no longer lives in the selfish my will, but is absorbed completely in thy will of the true being. Now, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here as I can't read the whole text in one video, but if this is something new to you, this is already a great reason to get this book and read the whole thing, which explains this all in much more detail. And just to comment on that about my very first astral projection experience, which I think is a good example, I didn't use any fancy techniques at all. I simply asked, I prayed, and I received. And after, I said thank you and felt grateful. It really is that simple, and it can be that simple for everyone. But because we have ego and don't understand or feel a connection to divinity, we invest so much energy in egos of greed, pride, desire for powers, and into relying on fancy intellectual techniques instead of investing our heart into recognizing and giving thanks to the real power within us that really enabled our experiences. I've touched on this before, but the way he explains it in this book, I can't recommend it enough. And I definitely consider it essential reading for those who have been following this channel since the beginning. So he continues explaining all this by pointing out something I see all the time, which is when people say things like, I tried this or that method for astral projection or for meditation or for overcoming an ego, but it didn't work. So I got bored or I left the path. Or they just say, this is a waste of time. Why do this? And in the book, my friend makes the point very directly that this kind of thinking in itself is a test. And he says it like, we're asking our inner divine mother and father for experiences and realizations and spiritual awakening, but for whatever reason, we weren't given any rewards. We weren't given any sweets from our parents. And because of that, we acted like an ungrateful child towards our own divinity. And we can see this in daily life, in families, right? If you're a parent with a somewhat naughty child, if you keep giving your child special treats and presents, but they still behave ungratefully, then you no longer want to treat them, right? We're in a very similar situation. So this is a very beautiful and simple teaching that experiences on the path are actually very simple to attain. All you need to do to be successful is just purify your heart and ask God for what you want. That's it. No fancy law of attraction techniques needed or elaborate visualizations, etc. Just pure, simple, innocent love and relationship with the divine, and walk the path in remembering and honoring that. That's why in the Bible it says, "For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." Now, as much as I'd love to share more about this book, I want to keep this video short, and I've summarized on the screen just some of the main points that you'll learn from this book. Understanding what consciousness really is. Understanding the human machine and our conditioning. Understanding why killing the ego is so fundamental. Understanding solar and lunar bodies, man as a seed and how to germinate it. God, unity, and sexual alchemy as the highest form of magic. Why the path is so bitter in the beginning but becomes sweeter over time. And realizing the sense of true committed devotion or love for the path. Now, if you enjoy this book, there are two other books I'm also recommending. So that's three altogether. The first is the red one, The Beginning in the Middle, that we've just been looking at. The second is the yellow one, The Truth That Is a Lie. And the blue one, The Child as Sage. Three beautiful books. The Truth That Is a Lie is also perhaps a good place to start if you're totally new to all of this. It deals with, in a direct way, about totally dismantling our conditioned, ordinary state of consciousness or states of perception to completely tear down our never-ending ego interpretation of reality, as quoted. This book is for the rebel, the one who is willing to go against everything, that wants to know truth at any cost, no matter what. And he's not wrong about all that, friends, because if you really want to know the truth, you have to be willing to give up everything in your life. Everything. That's how much it should mean to you, because only then can you handle the conscious shocks of truth without getting burnt, offended, scared, overwhelmed, confused, upset, etc. And to throw everything away doesn't necessarily mean you throw away possessions or friends or whatever, but more fundamentally, it means to let everything you think and interpret of reality die. And not just your thoughts and interpretations and ego to die, but also the memory of all that to die. To completely erase your past conditioning, your personal history, to unlearn everything that you've learned in order to really see and feel and touch the truth. This is why Jesus said, "Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life will find it." So, this is also a really powerful book I highly recommend, and he goes into these kinds of things and how to do it in a really profound way. As for the Child as Sage book, this is a very playful and poetic book teaching the simplicity and wisdom of our child within, and teaches Gnosis through wonderful poems and children's stories. While intellectual study is important, it is also in art and higher and superior emotions of our being that we can better grasp the essence or spirit of certain teachings. And that's what this book does so beautifully. So in a way, the Beginning in the Middle book is science, the Truth That Is a Lie book is religion, and the Child as Sage book is art. So together you have in this series science, art, and religion, which are all fundamental ingredients of Gnosis. So, the links to purchase any of these books are in the description below. Your support towards my friend in purchasing these books and supporting the work he's doing, such as the Gnostic Method app, is deeply appreciated. If you have any questions at all, please leave a comment down below, and please share this video with others who you feel will enjoy these books or benefit from them too. And with that, everyone, I leave you with just one of the beautiful poems that are in the Child as Sage book. The Quest. To be truly free from ignorance and pain, we must learn and grow and never wane. In our quest for knowledge and truth, that will help us uncover our inner youth. It's not about robes or temples high, but about waking up and learning to fly to the heights of consciousness and true light that will help us overcome the darkest of nights. To gain knowledge, we must sit and think and learn to understand what makes us shrink, the cause of our suffering deep inside, and learn to let go of our foolish pride. Through meditation, we can see the moments that cause us misery and learn to let go of all the blame, to find a way to rise above the pain. It's hard to trust our own perception, for it is clouded by our own deception. But with focus and hard work, we can see the truth that lies within you and me. So let's learn to let go of our pride and find the knowledge that will never subside, to understand ourselves and find our way to a life of happiness with Inri at play. So let's start by learning about ourselves and the things that make our lives a living hell. And through knowledge, we can find our way to a life of joy and a brighter day. The Gnostic path is one of pure science, where we seek to learn and never defiance, to suspend judgment and see things as they are, and find the knowledge that will take us far.